What does the dominant ISFJ subtype look like?
These are ISFJs that are oftentimes in a leadership position. They're good at shepherding people in organizations and playing a humanistic role, and they have a very in-charge style. So I wouldn't be surprised if these ISFJs maybe sometimes mistype as ESFJs or possibly even ESTJs. There's a very assertive quality about the dominant type, which is unsurprising because they're called dominant. They have a very strong halo of connections around the perimeter of their mind, which means that they have fast executive function. And so these ISFJs, in comparison to others of their same type, are going to be faster decision makers. They're still going to have ISFJ preferences, so it doesn't mean that they're going to make as fast decisions as maybe some other types. But within the cluster of people similarly wired to them, they're going to be a bit faster. And they're doing it in a way that communicates confidence. So they're making faster decisions than maybe some other ISFJs, and they're doing it with a sense of confidence, which is one of the reasons why they tend to seek leadership positions, because those are qualities we're looking for in leaders. They also are good at building rapport. They're very good with planning. They think conceptually, and they trust values. They have strong managerial skills as well. Some of the things that they tend to be very good at is they're really good communicators. So they actually are pretty good public facing. And they use language to help in reasoning. And they also are really good with body awareness, especially if they go into anything that has to do with the arts or anything physical or technical, then they usually produce very good body awareness. And they also have a capacity to, their minds have a subtle starburst sort of flavor to them, which means that their whole minds light up when they're considering a problem, as long as they feel relaxed. So if they're in a good space, they have easier access to their intuition.
Yeah.
And so they can think creatively as long as the situation isn't stressful in any way. And so because of that, there's a lot of different things that they qualify for. So some of the specific careers that are good for people who have dominant ISFJ preferences is that things like nonprofit management, healthcare administration. So this could be like managing a medical center or overseeing the budgets for a medical center. Human resources, which is one of the ones that you mentioned, school administration, like overseeing curriculum development or teacher training, even not just being like the school teacher themselves, but overseeing some of these capacities, event planning, public relations. So like managing an organization's public image or coordinating media relations or communicating with, stakeholders. These would things that would be in their wheelhouse. And then consulting, right? Any sort of management consulting that allows them to use their mind to help a company ameliorate what's going on.
I have a question that's not direct communication. It's a thought that came up to me just now. How much do you believe a dominant ISFJ is dependent on the structure to have their back to be dominant? In other words, can they be dominant outside of a system? Do they need a system as a ballast or some authority structure underneath them to awaken this dominance?
I think that they definitely thrive when they are in an institution or have an infrastructure that helps support them. There are some ISFJs that might even dip their toe in entrepreneurship, but the dominant ISFJ didn't seem as keen on that.
Yeah.
This is more an ISFJ that's using what's already sort of been established to go in there and communicate expertise, sort of bridging relationships, making sure that there's some polish to it, making sure that there's a high degree of good communication and that the ship is running smoothly.
Yeah.
So I think dominant ISFJs are not necessarily the ones that are going to go start businesses, although they could do that as well. There have been some dominant ISFJs that have built empires. But I think for the most part, they're really good at getting the skills they need. They're lifelong learners, and they're very good at gaining the status they need as well. So climbing up the ranks, gaining all the skills and learning they need, and making sure that they are always well respected. Yeah. And that's done best, I think, in an institution.
Yeah. So if you're identifying with a dominant ISFP subtype, often you will probably want to look for an organization to join, something to be a part of that's greater than you, that's bigger than you, that you can be inside of to then let all of these characteristics and qualities come out.
Right.
All right, so let's go a little bit into the depth of this for type geeks that are following along.
Okay.
The neurotransmitter that is associated with the dominant subtype for all dominant subtypes, and also for the ISFJ dominant subtype, is testosterone.
Right.
And then there is the cognitive functions of the ISFJ. So the driver or dominant cognitive function, different word dominant to describe this, is introverted sensing, or what we've nicknamed memory. This is how an ISFJ perceives their world. They take in new information, and they make their decisions using extroverted feeling. This is their co-pilot or auxiliary cognitive function. We've nicknamed that harmony. It's about getting needs met. It's about ensuring that people are getting along, all the needs are met in a group. It's about social interaction and all of this. So that's how an ISFJ is moving through the world. There's an attunement of these functions that indicates that they are a dominant subtype.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the general principle of attunement, and then what does this look like for an ISFJ specifically?
Okay, so for the type geeks out there, there is a preference for what's called analytical version or analytic versions of each of those functions. So if you want a more of a deep dive, we recorded an entire episode with Dr. Dario Nardi about these subtypes and how they work. I would recommend going and checking out that episode. It's very interesting, and he breaks down sort of the science behind all of this, the quote-unquote math behind it. Not really math, but you know what I mean. Yeah. So each of the cognitive functions can have an either analytic or a holistic preference. An analytic is a more targeted, sort of focused. It's a very assertive way of experiencing the function. It's kind of like it's almost got blinders on because it knows its direction and it's heading towards it. And then the other option would be holistic, which is a more open frame. It's not as assertive. It doesn't have as much push out energy. It has more of like a broad spectrum, but it's not as focused on anything. It's more sort of receiving or like looking at a bigger picture through the lens of the function. Dominant ISFJs have a preference for both their functions, both introverted sensing memory and also extroverted feeling harmony, to be analytic. And that's part of the drive, is that they're sort of focused and driven and assertive to get that focus accomplished.